Hi, my name is Nicholas. Welcome to this week's Yin practice. For props for today, a soft block and a bolster will likely come in handy, and then anything else you like to practice with. And when you're ready, I'll invite you to get started lying on the back, and you can take the bolster underneath the spine. So you can place it kind of halfway up the mat, and then you can come to sit just in front of it, lowering the spine down onto it. And come in nice and slowly. So if you find that the bolster is a little plump, maybe it's a little steep for the low back, you could also be sitting on your soft block here. If you're on the taller side, or depending if you're using a pillow, then maybe the head's hanging off the edge, so you might use one of your other props to support it. And then see what works well for the lower body here. I'm going to take like an easy pose shape, but you could also have the legs extended or have them out in butterfly. It might be nice to take the arms kind of down to the sides. You could also take them to the floor overhead, maybe even interlacing the hands, see what feels best for the chest and for the shoulders. Take your time to set up, and if something feels a little stiff or icky, then feel free to move around a little bit before you find your stillness, or you can modify your shape. Find something where you feel supported, where you can quiet down and settle in. Eventually find your stillness here. Keeping the awareness on the body. Noticing the gentle flow of your breath. Before we move on from here, check in to see if you benefit from a little more time in the shape. You're welcome to stay as long as you need. Otherwise, as you feel ready, if the arms are to the floor overhead, you can bring them back down. Maybe helping the knees up, bringing the soles of the feet to the floor, and then from here you can roll to one side, just enough that you can move your prop out from underneath you. You might pause here for a few breaths, feet apart, knees together, maybe hands resting somewhere on the body. Let the spine settle. And when you feel ready to, any way you like to get there, roll yourself onto the belly and make sure you have your bolster nearby. We'll set up for Sphinx pose here, and you can use the bolster. You can bring it across the mat, just behind the elbows, to make the shape feel a little more supportive. If you want more intensity, you could also bring the elbows up onto the prop, see how that feels. As with a lot of the poses, I find that Sphinx pose tends to get more intense the longer you hold it. So if it feels kind of like you're in that zone of barely sustainable, once you get started, then it'll likely feel more intense later. So choose something that feels like you could hold it for the whole 2 minutes or so. Notice the rest of the body as well. Maybe the feet can relax a little bit or the ankles. See what feels comfortable to do with the neck. Once you find your shape, find your stillness here. As you feel ready to come out of the pose, you can gently start to lower yourself back down, sliding your bolster out of the way. You might stack the palms, maybe lower the forehead down to it. Either choosing stillness here, maybe a windshield wiper of the heel side to side. You could also slide a knee up to one side, holding that for a few breaths and then switching sides. If you have a knee bent, then you can re-extend it and check in here, see if the spine needs a little more time to settle. Otherwise, as you feel ready, you can press up with the hands and come and find child's pose. Knees together for child's pose might feel a little more supportive for the low back, so you might choose that, or you can take the knees apart and gently lower the spine down. Add some support for the forehead if the floor feels a little far away, or maybe something between hips and heels. Any arm expression here. If you're happy where you are in child's pose, you're welcome to stay here. Otherwise, reach the arms towards the top of the mat and then walk them over towards the top right a little bit. And finding a nice stretch for the left side of the torso, up into the left shoulder and tricep. You might cross the left arm over the right for a slightly deeper expression. And keep that left hip nice and heavy if you feel it lifting. And breathe here.
You can start to walk the hands back to center and then take them over to the left hand side. This side may need a slightly different expression. See how this feels. And then settle into your stillness as you're ready. Gently start to walk the hands back to center, pausing in your child's pose once again. From your child's pose as you feel ready, and come up to find a tabletop position. Setting up the knees roughly underneath the shoulders, or the knees roughly underneath the hips, and the hands roughly underneath the shoulders. And then we'll set up for a twist here. So you can start to slide the left arm underneath the right, gently lowering that left shoulder down to the floor. You can have your soft block nearby. Sometimes the head hovers uncomfortably here, so you might choose to support it. And then see how this feels. If this feels like plenty for the shoulders, for the spine, then you can stay here. You could also experiment with a different arm expression, maybe bringing the right hand on top of the left. You could go for a half bind as well. If removing the right hand from the floor puts pressure on the neck, then keep it there just to create a little more balance. Whatever you're choosing, make sure it feels like a pain-free expression. And notice the hips for a moment as well. If you notice that the hips are starting to slide over towards the right, see if you can create just a little resistance, keeping them in center. If the right hand is somewhere other than the floor, you can bring it back and then gently start to unravel the body back to center. You might pause here, rock the hips a little bit side to side. And whenever you feel ready, we can set up for the second side. You can start to thread the right arm under now, settling the right shoulder, the right side of the head to the floor. This side may feel different, so feel free to choose a slightly different expression than what you did on the first side. And eventually finding your stillness here. You can return the left hand to the floor if it's somewhere else, and gently brace down and unravel yourself back to center. And see what feels good from here. You can stay in tabletop, maybe snake the spine side to side, or maybe a few rounds of cat-cow to help release. And you could come back to child's pose as well, so take the next few breaths wherever you need to be. And from your tabletop, when you feel ready, we'll step one foot forward and then the other, coming to find a dangling shape or a forward fold. And see what feels good for the body here. So you can keep the hands down. You could bring your hands onto your props. If the floor feels a little far away, maybe be in more of a halfway lift position. If it feels okay to let the spine go, then go for it. Let the head hang nice and heavy. And option from here, if you like, you can interlace the hands at the low back. You can either keep them there or think about lifting your clasped hands up towards the ceiling. Make sure it feels like a pain-free expression. If there's any pinching, whether it's in the hips or the low back, maybe the hamstrings or the shoulders, you can modify or back out as much as you need. And when you are ready, find your stillness here. Notice the gentle flow of your breath. have a bind with the hands, you can gently release that first. Bringing the hands either down to the floor or maybe onto the legs somewhere. And come and find a halfway lift. Stretch out the spine. Notice the space from the tailbone to the crown of the head. Make that nice and long. Maybe some length from the heels to the tailbone as well. And then any way you like to get there, you can lower the hands, start to bend the knees, and lowering the bum down onto the floor, coming to find a seat. Any comfortable seated position, maybe easy pose, or it can be a kneeling shape or something like that. And take a moment to settle the hips down, to gently lengthen the spine. And soften the shrug muscles. And then keeping the spine nice and tall, gently start to lower the right ear down towards the right shoulder. And see what this feels like through the left side of the neck. You might find a nice stretch from the left shoulder all the way up towards the left ear. If you like to add on some intensity, you could also reach the left fingertips down towards the left. And you could also cup the head with the right hand, not so much pulling, but using the weight of the right arm to deepen the sensation. Always a pain-free expression. And when you're ready, find your stillness here. If you have that right hand lifted, you can lower it first, and then gently bring the chin in towards the chest, and roll the head to the left-hand side, and then back over towards the right, and do this a couple of times. When you're ready, bring the chin into center, and then lift and stack the head once again. And take a moment to reset yourself, lengthening the spine, softening the shrug muscles. And then see what it feels like to lower the left ear towards the left shoulder. The side may feel different. You may need to modify. And the options are there if you want to add on, either reaching the right fingertips down to the right, maybe cupping the head with the left hand. Notice that stretch from the right shoulder all the way up to the right ear. Breathe here. Gently release the left hand. Gently release the head to center. Give yourself that gentle roll of the head side to side. When you feel ready, chin to center, and then lift and stack the head on top of the spine. And soften the shoulders here, find that length, maybe a slight tuck of the chin in towards the throat. And then check in to see how you'd like to end your practice today. If you'd like to stay in a seated meditation, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, you can return down onto the back. This time you might take your bolster towards the bottom half of the mat so that you can rest the legs down onto it. Whatever you're choosing, make sure it feels nice and comfortable for you. Using any of your props however you need them. Finding any comfortable symmetrical shape. And then finding your stillness here. Gently deepen the breath to reawaken the body. And give yourself a little movement here through the hands and through the feet. Maybe a gentle roll of the head side to side. And perhaps a full body stretch. You can extend the arms, reach with the toes, maybe wiggle the hips. And then roll down onto one side. Take a pause there for a couple of breaths. With a the support of the hands, coming up to find any comfortable seated position. You can use any of your props here. And settle the hips, gently lengthen the spine. Find a little softness in the shoulders. And take these last few moments of your practice just to notice. And then you might bring the palms of the hands together, maybe bow the chin in towards the chest. Thank you for sharing your practice today. Namaste. Thank you for joining me for Yin practice. And my name is Nicholas. If you have any questions, please reach out and enjoy the rest of your day.